They know that your sex drive is not a mythical creature that you have to pray to catch like a Loch Ness monster sighting, but is rather a dependable, cyclical part of your body's system that you can turn on and off like a light switch or more like a dimmer switch, right? We can shift it up and shift it down.
Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, a place for parents to come and learn together about the sometimes bumpy road back into the saddle of their sex life after adoption, birth, or joining a blended family. I'm your host, Sofia Ashley, certified sex educator and sex coach, mother and stepmother, and your totally TMI guide to becoming BFFs with your body and initiating easy and connected and confident, naked, sexy fun times. Here we are, one part science of sex, one part mindfulness magic, and one part straight up real talk to help you find the spark in yourself and your relationship after kids. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello and welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, my friends. Welcome back. I am very excited about this episode. I got an email the other day from a woman who said some version of what I hear pretty much every day. She writes, but my libido is probably my biggest problem. She's been through an autoimmune diagnosis this year and dealt with chronic health issues like most of us. And she's doing all the things, working on the lifestyle changes, etc., to get her libido back in the boat. She says lots of things are improving, but she would like her libido to catch up more often than a few days a month. I know from talking to y'all that many of you are in this place of thinking, once I fix my libido, once I stop breastfeeding and my hormones change, once I have more energy and less stress, once I deal with all the trauma in my vajayjay that's blocking me, once I reconnect with my feminine energy, as I definitely once believed, once I get on the other side of perimenopause or menopause, once I insert whatever you think the problem is here, and our sex life will get back on track. Underneath that is really an even sneakier belief that good sex only comes when there is a strong desire for sex. That good sex only comes from a strong desire for sex. Well, let me ask you a question. Does a great workout come only from a strong desire to work out? Or can I show up to the mat or the bike or the treadmill and have a great workout regardless of how excited I was to get there? Does a magic moment with my kids only come from a strong desire to spend time with them? Or can magic come even in the moments when the last thing I want to do is hang out with my kids and sit and be present with them? But I show up anyways, and the magic shows up too. Have you ever experienced that? I know I certainly have. Does a lack of motivation or desire for something really truly mean that we don't want the result or the outcome, or that it can't arrive anyways? No, right? That's not true. And we can take this an even a step further, especially when we're talking about sex and the body. And we can ask ourselves, if my body doesn't crave sex, then is sex something that it doesn't want or need? Because that's often the equation we make, right? And a parallel would be here, if my body doesn't crave healthy foods and nourishing movement, are those things not actually what my body needs? Like, abso-fucking-lutely not, right? So why do we treat our desire for sex the same way that we treat our desire for nutritious movement, nutritious food, right? As if motivation and your body's cues for desire are what matters 100% all of the time. We know that motivation and desire don't always create action. They don't always create change. They don't always create the desired result. Habits do. Showing up does. And where this space can get tricky in sort of the sexuality space is that our body's urge or craving for something is not always a correct signal or information from our body. I am a huge proponent of us learning to listen to our bodies. That is the whole premise of the Happy Progina Project. And we have to be careful about how we read that information. My body craving sweet foods is not an indication that I should eat sweet foods. It's typically an indication that something's off with my gut microbiome. There's bugs in there that crave the sugar and they are overpowering the other bugs, right? My body's lack of desire for sex is not typically an indication that sex is not a useful, good, or pleasurable thing to do for my body. It is often an indicator that I need to change how I am having sex and maybe who I'm having sex with, depending, right? So, how do we fall into these traps? Couple of reasons. Let's talk about them. Firstly, we typically, as a society, have a huge focus on libido and desire when it comes to sex, especially for female bodies or bodies with uteruses. So, sex in the movies is always hot, passionate, five-star meal affair where we smash faces together, rip clothes off, and cut to two people panting on the floor, deliciously satisfied. As a society, I think we're pretty obsessed with attraction and desire as sort of this outward aesthetic instead of an inward sensation or like a subtle intention. And we only view good sex through this lens. If I'm not being pulled by an invisible magnet into sex, then there is no desire. But what happens if there's just a quiet nudge towards it? Where's the quietly good sex? Where's the sweet orgasm that feels like honey melting over your body? Where is the desire that comes from that moment of closeness and vulnerability and really true intimacy? Secondly, we have problematized women's or uterus owners' libidos as low. But low compared to what? Low compared to who? Low compared to the medical model, which is male, right? The baseline, which is penises. So that puts us in this deficit position from the get go, where we tend to believe our bodies are more complex and complicated and inconvenient because of that. We believe that our libidos are inherently wrong, low, bad, or broken. And if you add to this becoming a mother or a parent, the expectation, the default is that we will have no desire, that we aren't supposed to have any desire. What that means is that we are striving from day one for a libido that works a certain way instead of understanding the operating manual for the libido that we have and for the body we have. And that means we're striving for a figment of our imagination, something that is unreachable. We're not going to win here with this way of thinking. Thirdly, this whole situation and this whole way of thinking puts us in a binary bind where the options are either I'm 100% dripping wet hot for my partner on the one hand and forcing myself to have sex that I don't want on the other. And it's hard to see any other way forward or the middle path, so to speak. This belief, I'll just wait for my libido to get online, or I'll work really hard to fix my libido with pills and toys and creams and doctor's visits and then my sex life will get back on track, is a trap. It's a trap that keeps us waiting, hoping, praying, wishing, and sometimes putting a lot of work into things that ultimately get us nowhere. Sometimes those things help, absolutely, and oftentimes we're putting a lot of effort into things that might move the needle and might not. Ultimately, we get stuck in a sexless marriage, we lose the passion, the spark, we become roommates, and you know where this story goes if we let it continue to go that way. So, what do people with vibrant sex lives after kids do? How do they avoid or step out of this trap? They don't wait, they create. They know that they can listen to the signals from their body to change how they are having sex in a way that creates the cravings. They know that they can create the habit of showing up to the bedroom ready to create a good time and reap the results of a fantastic workout, quote unquote, without forcing themselves to do things that they don't want to do. We are not gaslighting ourselves here, friends. They know that your sex drive is not a mythical creature that you have to pray to catch like a Loch Ness monster sighting, but is rather a dependable, cyclical part of your body's system that you can turn on and off like a light switch or more like a dimmer switch, right? We can shift it up and shift it down. And there's a couple of key steps that folks who have a vibrant sex life after kids follow. And I'm going to walk you through them by sharing an experience from my own bedroom that happened just this week that just really beautifully illustrates a different kind of formula or a different kind of approach, a different kind of belief that we can take to our sex life. So, backstory, if we are new to each other, I just want to share a little bit of context so you understand where this story is coming from. So, I have three kids, a stepson who's 13, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Sex is always something I have struggled with. Orgasm is always something that I have struggled with. And motherhood messed with my libido more than anything I've ever experienced for all the reasons that I talk about in the first 4 or so episodes of this podcast. So if you're just joining now, head on back and check those out if you're trying to demystify what's happened to your libido, right? In particular, I was diagnosed with a thyroid disorder after my second baby, which can drastically affect your libido and your fatigue. So, after baby number two, I was less than interested in sex and honestly found myself at a place where I was like, do I even care anymore? Will I just not have sex anymore? I really didn't know where I was going to find the desire for sex anymore. Now, as a sex coach, I've been able to use and refine my own tools on myself and in my own bedroom so that I can get back to a sex life that is fun, playful, and creative after kids. And this is what I hope for you as well, my friend. We do not need to suffer in the sexlessness, in the distance, and in the disconnect. So, the first thing we need to do to get a sex life worth craving is to understand your libido and what makes your unique libido tick, to know how to throw a party your libido wants to show up to, in essence. And hubby and I have been working on this for a while and have developed what I like to refer to as a pre launch checklist, which is really just a list of strategies that we know work to support my body to go from zero to interested to totally in. And while these all felt pretty mechanical at first when we were implementing them, they're now pretty seamlessly integrated into our lovemaking these days. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, but the point is we know how to coax my little wallflower of a libido out onto the dance floor. We know how to invite her out. And so we have invested in that knowledge and understanding each other and being able to integrate that knowledge so that we can access it really quickly and seamlessly. Secondly, people who have a vibrant sex life after kids focus on their intention to have sex, not necessarily their desire. So, like we explored at the top of this episode, many of us believe that the formula for great sex is attraction. I feel like I want to rip your clothes off. Therefore, I am aroused. Therefore, we have hot sex. Now, that's one formula for sure. But we can actually shift this formula to intention. I decide that I want to connect with you sexually or naked. Plus pleasure. We find ways to create pleasure in each other's bodies that are focused on sensations. Equals connection. This creates connection, which translates into hot, sensual, yummy, delicious, all kinds of wonderful, sexy times. I have become obsessed lately with paying attention to this intention moment. The moment I hear the smallest nudge from my body that there is an intention to connect with my husband. It could be that I just see a practical window of time and space where we will have privacy and can actually do it. It could be when I'm ovulating and I just feel a slight tick interested. It could be when he does something particularly sweet. But it's like imagining my wallflower of a libido and she's got like a request on the tip of her tongue that's just barely coming out instead of her yelling, I want you to put it in me. It's the subtle moment, it's the subtle voice. So if I illustrate this point, the other night I was all curled up in bed, not sleeping, but comfy. And my husband came into the bedroom, got into bed, and rather than settling on his side of the bed, he started to move towards me under the covers, which is not our norm because we both just get into bed and are exhausted most of the time. So my body instantly went into suspicious. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? What do you want? What are you looking for? Or I'm confused. Like, what is happening here? This is not the normal thing that happens. And he was kind of like, well, I thought maybe we could, have a little cuddle. And I was really like taken aback is the best expression for this. I don't know why. I think part of this is like I don't see myself as very sexy these days, right? So I was confused. I was bewildered. I kind of had this like, you really had this on your mind? It was the furthest thing from my mind. But I hit the reset button, right? And while I could have just taken that confusion as a big red stop sign and shut him down, instead I sort of awkwardly was like, "Oh, well, okay, maybe we could." Super encouraging, right? So at this point we're both feeling kind of awkward, but we'll continue the story in a moment, right? And this is an example of where he made a move, but I've also been tuning into when I'm interested. Like several months ago, I came home after dropping kids off in the morning, and the signal I got from my body was, we have an hour, no kids are home. Maybe we should get naked together. There was no like, oh my God, I want to rip your clothes off together. It was just, hey, there's an opportunity here. Should we see if maybe we can take it? So, whether I'm responding to an invite from my partner or an intention from myself, tuning into this more subtle yes or maybe that's hiding instead of waiting for that full fledged sort of horn dog feeling is a place to play. It's a place to get curious with your own body. And the next step is really going to help with that. Okay, so the third step is to turn stop signs into yield signs. When our body's saying no, when we turn our partners down or shut down our own intention within inside of us, this is a big old stop sign. And those stop signs are all the reasons your nervous system, your trauma, your habits, your fears, your judgments have for not getting the ball rolling any further. And this can sound like, I'm bloated, I'm tired, I'm not in the mood, I don't feel sexy, this will be so much work, I'm frustrated with you right now, blah, 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 blah. It sucked last time. Now, some stop signs are important to pay attention to if they indicate a true and total lack of safety, or if you really absolutely, you're like, no, I need to sleep right now, or like there's just absolutely no wiggle of an intention there, listen to your nose, my friend. Absolutely. And also, I'm encouraging you to question them a little bit. Maybe you can get curious about what they're telling you or what is underneath them because they might just be trying to protect you, but they could be getting a little over defensive, which I think has really been the case for me lately. Maybe they're just this habit, right? Saying no is just like the easier thing to do. It's the deeper pathway. Or maybe there's a false belief under that no that you can kind of pull at the thread a little bit. There's a lot of opportunity in getting curious about our no's and figuring out where we can turn those stop signs into yield signs. So, case in point, if we go back to the other night, my husband made the move. I decided to lean into the moment, but my body was riddled with stop signs. It was undecided. It was stuck between a yes or no. And we started to make off, and like all these alarm bells are going off in my brain. And I almost imagined this like bossy director, and she's yelling, "Cut! It's all wrong. Everything's all wrong. Back to your starting positions, people." I couldn't get comfortable. The pacing of our kissing felt off. The different sensations in my body felt wonky. And so much of me was like, I don't want to I don't want to, but this other part of me was like, I do want to. And I was just really stuck in this internal tug of war where my nervous system was like, no, no. And so the solution was to tend to my nervous system, right? So we used that checklist. We put on some music that I like. My partner backed off. He started gently massaging my body in some playful ways and exploring some new spots and touches that we'd actually learned about earlier that week when we watched one of the videos from the Sex After Kids Summit, where we were exploring erogenous zones together. And we got there. We got there. And it was delicious, my friends. I could have totally missed out, right? We used tools and strategies to turn those stop signs into yield signs, which just means slow down, proceed with caution, take it one step at a time, and if it feels right, keep going. Last but not least, after all of that, we want to lean into the skill of communication. Before, so me negotiating if I was in or not. During, me asking for what I needed with a change of music, different touch, a change of pace in our kissing, and most importantly, after, when we debriefed what happened and we observed how well those new tools that we were learning helped me to transition and helped me to go from a no to a maybe to a yes. And especially how one new move that we tried really got me to the finish line. And I was very specific about what he was doing and how it was feeling for me. I could have done what I often do that night, which is to take the lack of desire in my body, the lack of response in my body, and all the stop signs as reasons to believe that I am broken and no longer want sex, instead of deciding that the formula of desire equals arousal equals hot sex is broken. I rewrote the formula instead, right? What could have been another night and another wedge creating distance and separation in my relationship became a night of connection and ultimately delicious and yummy sex that will bring us together. So I bring it back to you, my dear listener. Do you want to keep wishing your libido will show up or work hard for it to come back with all kinds of magical strategies, some of which are needed, some of which are not? Or are you ready to start creating, to start planning that party that your libido wants to show up to? I leave it up to you. But if you are ready to make space for a new formula in your sex life, then I encourage you to hop on a free Sex After Kids Reset Roadmap call with me, where we can explore more of this formula in depth and how it looks in your love life so that we can get you a sex date you are excited about before the end of December or into the new year. You can find the link in the show notes below. I've only got 20 spots open, so make sure you snag one as soon as you can. In the meantime, I will be taking a 2-week break over the holiday here, and I will see you all in the new year. I hope you enjoy a lot of joy and presence with your children and your partner. I hope that you practice micro intimacy and simmer your relationship with small acts of gratitude and love. And if you need some tips on how to do that, I just ran a 7-day little mini micro intimacy challenge over on Instagram. So you can head over and start that challenge anytime you want, just to enjoy some of those benefits. And I will catch you in the new year, where we will take 2025 as an opportunity to invest and breathe life into the relationship that we are in and the sex life that we have for the biggest and best year that we can imagine. I hope to see you there. Mwah.
This is the part where we do the end bit, right? Okay, friends, let's take a mindfulness minute here. One big deep breath in through the nose and one big deep full body sigh out the mouth. Voila. Your nervous system says merci. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope your head and your heart have something new to consider. No husbands were harmed in the making of this podcast, and a big thank you to my husband for his sound help and original music compositions. Love you, babe. You can catch us on Instagram at The Happy Bee Project for tools, tips, and anecdotes. You can join the newsletter for weekly-ish dispatches from my bedroom, and head to thehappyvaginaproject.com to learn how you can work with me. Catch you next time.